Welcome to 20 Minute Tabletop, a weekly podcast about board, card and miniatures games. And this week, Tom and I are going to be discussing deck building.
I have been camping for 5 weeks on the trot, Kev, so we've not talked for a long time. But during my camping trip, I played an awful lot of Star Realms, which is why I wanted to talk to you about this today.
Yes, Star Realms is the game that introduced me to deck building, which, I thought deck building was the process through which you construct a deck for a game like Magic the Gathering, where you go through a massive collection and end up building some kind of deck archetype. So this format of building a deck as you go, kind of building the plane as you jump off the cliff, as it were, is a new concept to me. And it was Star Realms, actually, when I came to visit, that introduced me to the concept.
Playing that with me, that was the first time you'd ever experienced a game like that, then?
Yeah, it was the small box. And I know there's been a million different versions of Star Realms, and there's Hero Realms and Cthulhu Realms now. It's quite a big intellectual property. But yeah, this very first small deck, and it was possibly a Kickstarter we played together, and I thought it was fantastic. And as soon as I got home, went out and bought it. And it's a great starting point because not only is it very inexpensive for the smallest product in their range, but it's really quick to learn. And it sounds like you've been playing it a lot with children over your camping holiday.
Yeah, more than I'd like, to be honest, Kev. Did you know that Star Realms was designed by Magic the Gathering Pro Tour champions and Hall of Famers?
I did. I couldn't have named him, but I knew it was kind of an elite level Magic the Gathering player. And I think you can tell that because you've got all of the kind of mechanics that you'd expect from a game like Magic.
Which surprises me a little bit, because what I learned about Magic the Gathering was that it was designed by Richard Garfield as a quick and easy game that people could play when they weren't playing Dungeons and Dragons, I think. I think it was like the love letter filler game of serious Dungeons and Dragons players. And obviously it's got completely out of hand now, so that Magic the Gathering probably can't be classed as a game that you play between games. It's a whole thing in itself. So I think the Magic the Gathering people have thought, right, we need something that actually is something you can whip out of a box and just play, and yet get Magic Light, I suppose. Is that fair to say? Star Realms is Magic the Gathering Light?
Yeah, in the actual card play, I think there's definitely echoes of Magic in there. But of course, the biggest difference is what I initially didn't understand about deck construction versus deck building in Magic.
So in terms of deck construction and deck building, the way I define it, although I imagine a lot of people listening have a clear idea of the difference, is I would define deck construction as a pain in the backside and deck building as a joyous experience. The thing about deck building that I enjoy is there's two types I've noticed, and Star Realms has the one where you get the random draw of a number of cards, a bit like Dominion. You draw a few out of your cards, and then you play through the deck iteratively, which means over and over again. But every time that you play through your deck, you're trying to improve the deck. I always think of it as, do you remember the film Karate Kid or Karate Kid? You know the wax on movement and, paint the fence? It's a bit like that, but every time you go round and do the same action, you get slightly better and slightly more skilled as you bring in new cards or thin the deck, and you get a little bit stronger at it. But then there are other deck builders where you actually start with all your cards in your hands, and you can choose from the entire card pool, and then you put them down into a discard pile, but you choose the order rather than drawing a few random ones. So a game like Concordia, you have the full option of which cards you're going to play. And of course, once you played it, you have to get through the rest of them before you're able to pick up your cards and start again. I suppose they both have different pleasures, but I must say in Concordia, having your actual full choice of cards is quite clever, I think.
Yeah, the mechanism through which you get the cards that you've bought in a deck builder varies from game to game. And there's a couple of examples I want to talk about later in the podcast. One in Eons End, and the other being Ricky Royal's Renegade, both of which handle the buying of cards a little bit differently. But I just want to revisit something you said, because you mentioned Dominion, which is a game I've never played. But from what I understand, it's kind of the grandfather of deck building. What's all that about, Tom?
Well, it's 2008. Kev, if that makes it a grandfather, we need to have some serious questions about our age as well. In 2008 is about 5 years ago, I think. But yeah, it's widely credited as inventing the genre. And actually, it was one of the games that I first played that blew my mind, in terms of modern board gaming. It was one of the first ones that I got, and I couldn't believe how good it is. And even to this day, I still think it's a fantastic game. I got Dominion, and then I bought Dominion Intrigue, which introduced some player interaction, whereas the original Dominion was essentially a solitaire kind of experience. And at the time, I thought I was going to get every single expansion for Dominion and have this big wall of Dominion expansions, and I'd never get bored of it. But, time happened and themes happened and games developed, and they built on what was there. We're probably going to talk about some of the games that have built from that really strong, solid foundation.
And is Dominion kind of a filler game in the same way that Star Realms is, which can be played really quickly? I mean, you can bang out a game of Star Realms in 15 minutes. Is it the same story with Dominion?
Yeah, it doesn't take long to play. I mean, the issue that Dominion has, I suppose, is that Dominion's a lovely deck building game, and you are improving your deck, and it really starts to get streamlined, starts to do what you want it to do. And at that exact point, what happens is you have to think, right, okay, my engine is now working. I'm going to have to buy victory points with my money rather than new cards. And at that point, your deck becomes less efficient and less fun. So part of Dominion is not necessarily about building a great engine. It's about building a great engine and knowing when to stop building a great engine and start ruining that engine and clogging up your hands with victory points, which is obviously something that Star Realms got rid of, because that's more combative, isn't it, in the way that you win that game?
Yeah, I think you start at, is it 50 authority or health? Why they call it authority, I don't know. And then you try and get the other person down to 0, which is, again, is very Magic-esque, isn't it? That you're starting at a life total and trying to get them down to 0. And in Star Realms, when you buy a card, it goes into your discard pile. And like you say, it's got to cycle through. Is that the same in Dominion? When you buy a card, does it go into discard?
Yeah, it goes into your discard pile. Obviously, there are cards that I think break that rule, and you can put them at the top of the deck, depending on certain cards that you buy. Like I say, my knowledge of Dominion's diminishing, ironically. It's a diminishing Dominion knowledge over time, because it's been many a year since I played it. But yeah, it is very, very similar. Very similar. It's built on the same foundations.
Nice. Well, there's a couple of other games which handle that. When you buy a card, it doesn't go into discard. Something else happens, and I think that's worth talking about. But before we do, I think we do need to have a talk about our age of time, because 2008 is not 5 years ago. It's 16 years ago, and we're getting old, brother.
But listen, if Oasis can come back, we can carry on as well.
Oh, Lord help us. Right. So we've talked about 2 games where you buy a card and it goes into the discard pile, and you kind of got to go around the houses, wait till that cycles through to get it back in your hand. Now, there's 2 games that I've played that do things a little bit differently. The first being Eons End, which is a co-op and solo game where you're fighting a monster, effectively. And there's all kinds of clever things going on. But the bit I want to talk about is just when you buy a card, what happens is it goes into a discard pile, but instead of that being shuffled and put back into the deck like every other game, you just turn it over, and then that comes as your new deck. So there's actually a little bit of thought in sequencing the cards. So buying a great card is one thing, but if you can buy them in a certain order to get the combo off when the deck turns over, which weirdly you have to think about in reverse, which is another dimension, there's a lot going on, and that's a really clever thing. Have you played Eons End?
Yeah, I think I did play it. I think I bought it as a digital format on an app through Google Play a while ago and had a few games on it. I think it's really cheap, actually, just about £2 or £3 to play.
Yeah, which I would say is worth it. I really enjoyed it. I think in my solo gaming days, nowadays, as you know, play more miniatures and card games. But when I was buying more solo games, I think this would have made the collection. When I play a game and enjoy it, I find that it goes right down to the wire. And that's exactly what happened in the end. So the timing that they'd worked into it was absolutely spot on. But yeah, I thought that was just worth mentioning, that when you buy a card, you don't have to shuffle it back in to form a hand. You can actually do some clever sequencing. And there's another game which does things slightly differently, which is perhaps my all-time favourite board game. Is that fair to say? It's definitely up there, top 3. And I'm a massive fanboy of Richard Wilkins, or Ricky Royal. Anyone who has played any solo will be familiar with Ricky Royal. He introduced me to Hoplomachus. Mage Knight has done a legendary tutorial, put hours and hours in, but he's a fantastic guy and he's just so relaxing to listen to. If you haven't checked out Ricky Royal's YouTube channel, you must go and look it up. What a guy. But he designed a game called Renegade, which is kind of a cyberpunk type theme of hybrid deck building and moving pieces around a hex, but the whole game is to simulate hacking into a supermassive computer, a SMC or server, basically. And you've got these hex tiles, and the AI that you're playing against will be generating little sparks or virus-type things. They move around, try and overwhelm you. And you are playing cards from your hand, and the cards are multifunctional, so they will move your playing pieces around. They'll be able to combat the sparks on the board by interacting with viruses or modifying the code. But there's the shop in this game is called the Hack Shack. The jargon is absolutely brilliant. And I know it's something that not a lot of people, well, some people don't enjoy. You've got virus replicants, uplinks, data nodes, rootkits, propagators, replicators, neural hubs, data ports, destruction, deception, cognition. It goes on. It's an absolute confusing mass of cyberpunk-themed computer words, which to some people is very confusing. But to me, I absolutely loved it. It drips in theme. But with the Hack Shack, you can use your cards not only to produce actions, but to build a deck. And instead of it going into a discard pile, you pay for the cards effectively, and you get it immediately into your hand. And I really, really appreciate the immediacy of getting it and doing something cool. It speeds it up, and I think perhaps as a solo experience as well, it just makes it that bit more urgent and feel like you have a lot more control. But yeah, Renegade, which is soon to be re-released as Deckers, which I think is possibly a nod to Blade Runner. I think the main character is called Decker, wasn't he?
No idea.
Yeah, but if you like the idea of a cyberpunk theme deck builder come puzzle game, then Deckers, or Renegade, if you want to pick it up off eBay, is an absolute must. So yeah, get your Google search alerts set up for Deckers. When that comes out, I'll be backing that on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I must say, Kev, Renegade is a word that I've heard come out of your mouth many a time. So I do trust your judgment on this, and I could see you visibly getting excited as you were talking about it. So I will get hold of that myself when it comes out. I think it's worth mentioning that there is some commonality, isn't there, between all these deck builders in terms of the mechanics of the games. Certainly, I would define them as adding cards to your deck that allow you to draw more cards on your turn, adding cards to your deck that allow you to thin your deck. And that's very much what the Red faction does in Star Realms.
Star Realms, the machine cult, of course. Yeah, and that was something I didn't realise for a couple of games, because without a faction or a mechanic in many other games of thinning the deck, it just gets, so large that the cards that you really want to come out, well, the probability is very low, because, they are 2 in a deck of 30 or whatever.
Yeah, and that's definitely my favourite mechanic, actually, in deck building, is to have a really tiny, streamlined deck, and just to make sure that I can have the cards that I want coming through. And part of that as well is junking.
Yeah, junking is, of course, the mechanism through which you do get rid of the cards. But the clever thing about Star Realms is that the junk ability, not only do you get rid of a card, but you can actually get bonuses. And in Star Realms, you're looking to stack these bonuses. So in the first couple of rounds, you might be doing 2 damage. But in the latter stages of the game, you might be knocking out 30 damage. So you can chain together all these combos, and you just feel like you're really clever, which is always a good feeling in a game.
And of course, the final mechanic, which is, I suppose, the one that people enjoy the most, is adding cards to your deck. Star Realms itself is a little bit like capitalism in a card game, isn't it? You just have a certain amount of money each turn, and you have a little pool of cards, and you think, I'm going to buy that. That's brilliant. And then the next person buys something. And I don't know about you, but tactically, I tend to veer towards 2 colours if I can, and try to get them to work together.
Yeah, that is also my approach. However, that is undermined by my complete inability to leave cards on the table. Like, oh, that's brilliant, I'll get that one. And then end up with a rainbow deck that does absolutely nothing, but, theoretically it could do something amazing. But that's pretty much the way I live life as well.
Just before we move on from Star Realms, it's worth knowing that they are releasing a child-friendly version of Star Realms, which is madness to me, because I can happily play that with my 7-year-old and he can get it. So I don't know how they're going to simplify it anymore. And of course, you can pick up expansions for Star Realms that exist as well if the original set is becoming a little bit samey. I was lucky enough to find somebody selling the standalone expansion at Car Boot, so now mine isn't really pocket sized, but there's a lot of variability in the deck.
Yeah, I've got the Star Realms Frontiers box, which is your typical small box board game, and that's plenty for me. I know that you can get like a big box and it's hundreds and hundreds of cards. To me, it doesn't hold that much interest for me. What I've got in the small box is enough for me. If I want something deeper, there's other games to play. But I did have a go at Hero Realms. I quite enjoyed that, although it's the most generic of generic fantasy. So rather than having gold generated by the different ships at the start of the game, you've got gems, various bits of theme pasted over the top of it. And, it didn't particularly do anything for me. So that got moved on. But Star Realms is going to be a mainstay. It will forever be a place in my collection just because you can pick it up so easily, play it with kids, and, have great fun with anyone who's willing to play with you.
So, moving on then from Star Realms, which we both agree is a good game. Certainly cost to fun factor value is well worth having, isn't it? It's not that expensive to pick up. And
absolutely.
But my favourite of all time deck builders at the moment, I'm going to put that proviso on because things move on very quickly, is Undaunted Normandy, which is absolutely incredible. It's a game that I mentioned in the podcast we did on the UK Games Expo because they've just brought out Callisto. I think it's called Callisto, which is a multiplayer version of it. Undaunted Normandy is set in World War II and focuses on the D-Day landings and subsequent battles in Normandy. And what is interesting for me about this game, well, there's plenty of things, is that it is starting with asymmetrical decks. Normally in deck builders, you start, don't you, with, 2 or 3 Vipers and then a number of cards that will bring you economy. And it's the same on either side of the table. But in Undaunted Normandy, somebody's playing as the Allied versus the Axis forces. And actually your starting deck, and in fact, the cards that you can actually add to your deck will be different. And not just different in that game, but in every single game of the campaign, you will have a slightly different setup. And of course, the other thing that's amazing about it is not solely focused on card management, because what you're actually doing with your cards as you play them is you're maneuvering units on a battlefield. So you will actually be using your deck to move your particular units, whether they're machine gunners or snipers, across a modular battlefield that you've set up. And therefore, what you're getting is a real sense of immersion and narrative depth as you move through this campaign of this game. It's incredible. What's really good is when units take damage in the game, you're actually being forced to kill soldiers out of your deck and they die and you can't have them back. They're gone. There are reinforcements you can buy, but that's really, really evocative and captures the theme of war quite dramatically. It's really, really powerful in a way as you're playing the game. I love this game. I genuinely think it's an amazing, amazing game, Kev. And it's a game that doesn't cost very much money. I think it's about £20 to pick up. And it's one of the most complex, interesting games that I've played that uses deck building mechanics in it. It's really, really good. And I suppose what it does is it combines war game mechanics, something like Memoir 44 with a deck builder, and doesn't outstay its welcome and is just really, really cleverly put together.
Tom, that looks absolutely amazing. I am looking at some Google images of it, and the modular battlefield, which is obviously right up my street, top-down 2D D&D style maps are right up my street, and it looks fantastic. Really beautiful game. I think that is one I'm going to have to check out, or at least wait till our next Oxford trip for you to show it to me. But yeah, it doesn't look expensive, kind of £20 to £30. Oh, you're tempting me. And I don't often say that.
I can honestly say, Kev, with hand on heart, this is your game to a T. You would love this. You just need to find the right person to play it with and get through a campaign, and it's great. And again, the entry point isn't that complex. I've been playing this with my 12-year-old lad, and he plays it and regularly beats me but it's just a fantastic, fantastic evolution, I suppose. And that's what I like about it the most, really. When you start by talking about Dominion, and then you look at a game like Undaunted Normandy, and it makes you think, in the 5 years it's been since Dominion came out, how far deck building games have come.
Yeah, absolutely. And I notice it's published by Osprey Games. And to me, that is a stamp which says buy this game. They have actually put out Gaslands, which, you know, we're both big fans of. Silver Bayonet, big into the wargaming thing. So it's very much on surface level, look at it, got the wargamer stamp of approval coming from Osprey. Very interesting. Does it have a solo mode?
I don't know, Kev. I imagine there will be one. I'm sure there will be one. I'm sure there will be one. Why don't we just do that thing in a podcast where we pause time and you can check?
Pausing. Having looked that up, Tom, yes, it does. It absolutely has a solo mode, which means pretty much I'm out of excuses for not buying it. And it's a small box. My goodness, it literally ticks all the boxes and gives me, furthermore, an excuse to get rid of tiny epic zombies, which is flipping awful. This is getting put in my strict 1 in, 1 out system.
Excellent. Well, there you are. It's interesting, isn't it, last week that we talked about dexterity games. Neither of us are massive fans, but there's a glint in both our eyes when we talk about deck building. Okay, so we probably need to wrap up around now, but before we do, just want to thank a few of our patrons.
Yeah, we've got Wouter, Simon, and Norm. Thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. We're a small tribe, but growing all the same. And those guys are getting access to the Decline 10mm rules, along with a growing library of fold flat scenery for both sci-fi and fantasy. I'm releasing those at a rate of 1 a week at the moment, which is taking some doing, but they seem to be going down quite well. So thank you so much. And if you want to support the podcast, that is definitely the best way that you can do it, by going to patreon.com/tabletopupgrades, and there's a link in the description. But if you don't want to do that, or you're not able to at the moment, then another way that you can support us and also chip into the podcast is by joining our Discord. Again, we've got a growing number of people in there that we have a small, tight-knit community, and we chat about all kinds of games and share our hobby work in progress. And we're even looking to get a Discord server game of Alice is Missing in the near future, which I'm really looking forward to, Tom.
Yeah, me too. I cannot wait to play that game. That's one that's been on my list for some time, so it'll be really good to do some role play with you, Kev. If you do listen, do share with your friends, do talk about us. There's been a few people recently that I didn't know that have done stories about some of our podcasts on Instagram, and honestly, it's made my day to see that people that we don't know are listening and actually think it's worth talking about and sharing and reaching out to us. So if that's you, please don't hesitate. Do get in touch and try to join the Discord. As Kev said, it would be really great to have you there.
Yep. So thanks for listening.